Hi, my name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent digital transformation firm that helps clients through their digital journeys in terms of setting their digital strategy and helping them through the actual transformation. And wanted to chat today about the recent SAP challenges at Haribo, which is Haribo is a European company that makes gummy bears. It's probably what they're best known for. And an interesting case study in maybe how not to manage a SAP digital transformation. They had some pretty significant supply chain disruptions after going live on the system late last year in 2018. It was announced in December. The news kind of broke out that they were unable to supply retailers and their customers with product, and due to some of the disruptions in the supply chain shortly after going live with SAP. And I recently wrote a blog about this, which you can access in the comments field or in the description field of the video below. But in the blog, I covered 5 lessons from this. And even though Haribo is not a client of Third Stages, it's always interesting to analyze the reasons for failures like these. And one of the things that, one of the big takeaways I had from reading about this failure in the research that I've done is how could this possibly have happened? I mean, regardless of whether or not you like SAP as a product personally, or whether or not the technology was the right fit for them, how could this possibly have gotten to the point where they go forward with the transformation and the supply chain is disrupted and they lose revenue, they lose sales because they can't get products on the shelves? And it really came down to me to 5 things that I found in thinking through this. And the first, I guess maybe not so much a finding, but just a key takeaway from this is that when you look at a SAP implementation or a digital transformation of any sort, operational disruption is probably the single biggest cost and risk associated with the transformation. When we're first beginning a transformation, oftentimes we're looking at, what on paper is this implementation going to look like in terms of time, resources, and cost. And it's kind of a hypothetical model of what do we think it's going to cost. But what we often don't realize is, first of all, that estimate oftentimes is not realistic. And second of all, that estimate typically does not include hidden costs, long-term costs, things that may negatively impact you as an organization or really add to the cost of the transformation. So that's the first thing, is operational disruption is a big problem. In fact, in the research that our team has done over the last 10 years or so, we found that around 50% of organizations have some type of material operational disruption at the time of go live. And what we mean by that is things like not being able to ship product, not being able to close the books, some type of thing that brings your company not to a screeching halt, but slows your company down significantly. So that's one thing to be aware of, is how can we mitigate the cost and risk of operational disruption? If we do that one thing, we've significantly mitigated the number one cost and risk factor in digital transformations. The other second lesson or takeaway from this case study is that business process management is super important to these types of projects. We need to do a good job of defining what our future state business process flows are going to be, what our business model is going to be, so that we can configure SAP or whatever ERP system or digital transformation technology that we're laying on top of that. We need the business to drive the technology rather than assuming that the technology is somehow going to drive our business. And if we get in the position where technology is driving our business, then we're in trouble because we suddenly have lost sight of why we're going through this digital transformation in the first place. So business process management is something that I would suspect was not done well on this project, because if it was, it should have exposed some of the problems that they ran into a lot sooner than they actually realized those problems. The third thing, which kind of dovetails in with the second around business process management, is that you want to make sure that your digital transformation aligns with your evolving business model. So in other words, we don't want to automate the way things are today. We want to automate how they're going to be in the future. And again, being a person that's on the outside looking in at this situation, since they're not a client of ours, one thing I read about is that they're opening more manufacturing facilities in Asia, I believe it was. So they're kind of shifting some of their production, I believe it was from Europe to Asia. And so their supply chain in general was changing and evolving. And I guess one thing I would look into if I was a consultant to them is how well aligned was the digital transformation with that reality of where they were headed as an organization. And like I said, chances are there was some misalignment there between where they were headed and the way they were implementing the software. And so that would be kind of a third thing is to make sure that the system is aligned with the evolving business model. And then the fourth thing is that system testing is oftentimes overlooked. Oftentimes, system testing focuses primarily on, does the software work? Have we worked out the bugs? Does the integration work? Are all the APIs working? The configurations, the customization. If it's all working technically, then we're good to go, right? But what we don't oftentimes spend enough time on is on the business process testing, the user acceptance testing, conference room pilots, whatever word you want to use for it, kind of testing the process using the technology, but testing the process and also testing roles and responsibilities. How are people going to do their job? Can they do their job in the system? Does everything flow seamlessly? Do they know what they need to do outside the system too? That's the other thing. A lot of times we forget about, we're not just implementing SAP, we're implementing SAP plus a bunch of other stuff that happens outside the system sometimes. And how do we make sure that's all integrated? And the way we do that is through user acceptance testing, conference room pilots, and really driving that testing process via our business processes. If we do that well, and if Haribo had done that well, I can't imagine there's much likelihood that they would have experienced the kind of supply chain disruptions that they had here. And then fifth and finally is, and this is kind of a stopgap baseline type of thing that needs to be in effect with any digital transformation, is that you need executive governance and leadership. You need the key guys and gals at the top of the organization driving this. They need to be aware of what's going on, and they need to be empowered and know enough about what's going on to know when to hit the pause button or hit the reset button in some cases. And you certainly don't want to get to the point where you can't ship product, you can't deliver to your customers, you ruin your brand, your recognition, whatever it is. You don't want to get to that point, and it's up to the executives. It's not your system integrator, it's not SAP or your vendor, whoever that is. It's up to you to make sure that you are empowered to do that. And so that's really the fifth takeaway. And I guess, to summarize the whole thing, the whole lesson from this for me is that digital transformations are your project. And that's something that I'm seeing in the industry lately, with as complex and sophisticated as technology has become in recent years with the cloud and, predictive analytics, machine learning, blockchain. All this new stuff is happening so quickly that we're losing sight of why we're implementing digital transformation in the first place. We're not doing it for those breakthrough technologies. We're doing it to change our business and to make it better. And despite those new technologies, it's your transformation. You have to be the one driving it. It's not your system integrators. It's not your system vendors. It's your project. And so I think that's the key takeaway. The one thing I would leave you with is, when you're going through this type of project, do what you need to do to bring in the right consulting partners, the right internal, external resources to manage this and stay on top of it. Manage the project like you would any sort of acquisition or a big capital improvement project, or whatever the case may be. Entering a new market, executives tend to spend a lot of time and have a lot of governance on those types of projects. But when it comes to a digital transformation, oftentimes they want to delegate that to other outside sources, or push it down internally within the organization. So it's real important that we have a vision of what that should look like going forward in terms of executive ownership of the project. So those are some of the lessons. You can read more detail in the blog in the description below on our website. So feel free to click through to that link if you'd like to read more detail. So hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Eric Kimberling, CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll chat soon. Thanks.